Well, hello and welcome to the Deschutes County Solid Waste Department's presentation for you all with County College. We want to welcome you to this presentation of our activities that we do here, and we're really looking forward to seeing you all on October 7th and being able to answer any questions and in particular kind of show you what we do out here, give you a tour of our facility and get to meet you all. So my name is Tim Brownell. I'm the director of the Solid Waste Department. I've been here for, oh gosh, 3.5 years, coming on 4 years now. I've been in the solid waste industry and recycling and composting infrastructure development work for, oh gosh, close to 35 years now. So happy to be talking with you, and as I said, looking forward to meeting you all. We oversee collections for all of the and that's collections of recyclables and solid waste / garbage, compost, as well as some glass in some areas. We oversee those activities in the unincorporated part of the county, and there are cities that also oversee collections within their jurisdictions. So depending on where you live in the county will determine who you need to call if you have any issues or questions. We also provide recycling services. Those are largely done, if not collection. We have pretty comprehensive system of recycling drop-off locations around the county. And are looking to expand those even further over the next couple of years. We also, at all of our facilities around the county, which we call transfer stations, where the public can come and deliver materials, both recycling and solid waste and yard debris. From all of those facilities, we then transfer those materials either to the landfill or to a recycling facility or the compost yard. So we are responsible for the coordination of the movement of all those materials, in particular the waste, throughout the county to our centralized facilities. And then, of course, we're responsible for the disposal. So we run a landfill here at Not Landfill, just outside of Bend. And we've been taking materials here since probably the 60s or 70s, but as opposed to a dump being a modern municipal solid waste landfill since the late 80s. On the collection side, we have franchise service providers. So Cascade Disposal and Republic Services now have the exclusive rights to collect in specific areas within the county, as well as those two haulers are also contracted to provide services to different cities. Waste Connections is the company that purchased Cascade Disposal back probably around 2010, and then Republic Services purchased 3 other of the locally owned companies back in 2019, thereabouts. The collections is then currently managed and prescribed through the court board orders that were established by the Board of County Commissioners back originally in the 70s, and then updated many times through the early 2000s. That prescribes the level of services, the fees that can be charged. So we do regulate the monthly fees and bills that you get. The haulers have to come to the county for approval and demonstration that those fees are appropriate and keep them within prescribed boundaries of profit. So they're allowed to make between 9 and 12% profit on their services, and they do financial reporting to us. And then the other thing that we provide collections for, besides recyclables, yard debris, and refuse is hazardous waste, particularly what we call household hazardous waste. We don't do that through curbside collection, but we do have a facility at our not landfill that's open every Friday and Saturday to collect a whole range of materials that we really don't want to get into the landfill or into the recycling stream. For recycling service, we provide curbside collection. We have the drop-off stations that we talked about, and those drop-off facilities have expanded materials beyond what you can collect at the curb. In the next few years, under something called the Recycling Modernization Act, that list of materials is going to continue to expand. But some items that we can take here that you wouldn't be able to put at the curb, things like large scrap metal. We're now taking mattresses, light bulbs, batteries, paint, and in the future it'll be things like plastic bags, clamshells, styrofoam. We're always looking to see what we can add to those material streams that aren't appropriate for collection at the curb. And then we also have yard debris collection and composting. Currently about 25,000 tons a year of yard debris and woody waste is collected and composted, and over the next few years we want to see if we can double that. And then the other thing we do is education and promotion, really trying to engage the community in understanding the breadth of programs that we have and how you might be able to access them. But what's interesting is we'll get into something called our solid waste management plan. I'll talk about that in a moment. But wanted to give you a sense of, as we look towards the future, we want to start managing and processing and collecting and separating other streams of material to improve our diversion from landfill. So we are looking at the development of processing construction and demolition debris. So we've been doing some planning on that. It's highly mechanized, so we would have a building with sorting equipment and people inside. Pretty fun processes when you get around them, and it's pretty amazing to see, large volumes of materials moving through buildings with the possibility of diversion and recovery. We're also looking at the potential of developing what's called a MRF. Our industry has a lot of acronyms. That's short for material recycling or material recovery facility that would process the materials in your recycling cart, that blue cart that you put out at the curb. We think it may be financially beneficial to be able to do that sorting here as opposed to collect it and then ship it to facilities near Portland to process and separate. It would also provide us with quite an educational opportunity if we were able to develop that facility. I know the public always wonders, where does my recycling go? And this would provide us an opportunity to really walk you through the process and really help for the public to see really how we handle those materials. We're also looking, right now we're only able to process about 60% of all the organic material that gets delivered to our sites. We've just overwhelmed the current composting facility here at Not Landfill. If you ever drive into the site, and actually when you do your tour today, or when you come, you'll see our composting facility. It's looks like it's large, but by comparison, that's a little bit of a postage stamp compared to what we think we might need. So we are looking at expanding that facility. This is a possible arrangement that we could do if we wanted to set it up in our facility up outside of Redmond. We are actually looking to expand our facility down here in Bend, but it gives you an idea of the size and scale, and we want to mechanize the system a little more than currently. If you take a look at it. It's just a lot of loaders and equipment moving materials by vehicle, and over time we want to have that be a more rational and expedited process. Our transfer stations, as I mentioned before, we have them spread throughout the county. We have one outside of Redmond. We call it the Negus Transfer Station. We have one down in the southwestern part of the county, just north of Wilpine on Highway 97, referred to as the Southwest Transfer Station. We have one on Friar Road, just outside of Sisters, handling the northwest part of the county. And then we have a small facility in Alfalfa, on Alfalfa Market, or just off of Alfalfa Market Road. And the reason we do this is have them spread around the county is try and make it convenient for residents, have affordable access so you aren't having to spend a lot of gas to drive to a different part of the county. We're looking to modernize those facilities so that if you've been to one of our remote sites, sometimes you have to stand and throw materials over a gate into the top of a truck. Here at Not Landfill, we have a large indoor facility that you come into and drop materials onto the floor. That's both a bit safer, and we can really monitor the materials a little better with our staff and compact our trailers a little more efficiently and effectively. So right there is the facility in Negus that we were building and then ultimately opened last spring. And we're looking to do this at the remainder of our facilities down the Southwest Transfer Station outside of Wilpine. We want to do in 2028 or 29. And then we would look into the 2030s to do the facility outside of Sisters. But this is the direction we want to go. It also starts to inform you as we start talking about infrastructure needs and capital needs here for the department. These facilities are not cheap to build. They cost somewhere between $20 and $25 million a piece. So solid waste requires pretty significant infrastructure to keep the outflows of our community moving, just like here. Not Landfill, as I mentioned, been open since the 60s. The area, I don't know, I think you see my head and placed in this presentation. The area where my head is the old part of the landfill. That's the area that we would call the dump, where it was really, that area had been excavated, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, for rock and soils. And a lot of times dumps were basically situated where they could fill in old holes, and that's what they were doing here. You see the other areas marked cell 1, cell 2, all the way through cell 10. Those are engineered cells, and that's where, starting in 1993, the federal government regulated that we had to have liners on the system to protect groundwater, because there is a lot of water that percolates through this system, particularly with the waste that is brought in. So we have to be able to contain all of that. So starting in, we were ahead of the federal requirement. We started in the late 80s with cell 1, which was our first engineered facility. Then when we do have a liner system on the bottom, we're able to monitor that whole system. We can monitor the water that accumulates down at the bottom of basically our bathtub here. We call that leachate, and we can pump it and move it around the system so that we don't get too heavy a hydraulic load down on the bottom of the landfill. We also monitor groundwater. We're here at not landfill. It's 700 feet down below us. So we have monitoring wells that have been go all the way down to that aquifer down below, and we're 4 times a year we have that water tested to make sure that we aren't doing anything up here that has impacted air. We also have gas probes on outside of our property that help us monitor the methane gas, which is generated as things decompose without oxygen. It makes something called methane, which is a form of natural gas, but it will migrate off the site if you don't manage it properly. So we do try and capture all the gas on the site, but we have monitoring wells off the site, make sure that we are capturing it. If you ever drive by here at night, you'll see a blue flame, and that is, we are 24 hours a day burning that methane gas as we capture it for methane destruction, so that it's not escaping and going up into the atmosphere, because it's a pretty potent climate impacting gas. And then this facility here, we are anticipating that it will be full by the some point in 2031. So we are also responsible for figuring out how do we close this. It's going to be once we're finished. You can see here there's a diagram of a landfill. You can pause it and poke around, pause the presentation and poke around if you want. You can see that there's a liner system on the bottom. So here we dig out about, first we have to excavate rock. We had lava flow or basalt on the top, so that gets blasted, and some of the rock is used for our drainage system here on the landfill, and some of it's sold to market. Then we dig down another 30 to 50 feet below the basalt, make a 80 foot or so deep hole here on the site, put a liner on the bottom, and then start to fill. And you can see this kind of demonstrates all the different monitoring systems and controlled systems we have to have. On the far right up there, you'll see electric generating station. In some landfills, they recover that methane, burn it, and convert it to energy. We're in the process of working with Cascade Natural Gas to develop a system to clean the methane gas, because when it comes out of a landfill, it's about 54% methane or natural gas, and the remainder is other gases. Hydrogen, sulfide, oxygen, carbon dioxide, etc. We're going to be working with Cascade Natural Gas to put a gas cleanup system here, and then get it cleaned up to about 98% pure natural gas, and then it will be. We have the substation from the large gas pipeline that comes through Bend. There's a substation that we can tap into that will provide this natural gas directly to homes in Bend. So pretty unique situation. We're pretty excited about it. And then this system also shows how we have to close it at the end. So landfills, systems like this we would refer to them when they're finished as a dry tomb, that we don't want water coming into the landfill once it's closed up. So we put systems on the top and then wastewater, stormwater recovery systems, so that we can minimize any rainwater contact with the waste mass, so that any precipitation can just shed off the site, not to be contaminated, and can go back into natural systems. And then for 30 years after we close, we have to continue to monitor the site, monitor the groundwater well below the site, manage the gas that will continue to be produced for years after. We have a minimum 30-year liability responsibility for monitoring, but most likely it will be indefinite until this entire waste mass is settled, which could be. I just spoke about that landfill gas recovery system. This kind of gives you a sense of how it all goes through the sets of cleaners. Coming out is what they call renewable natural gas. And you might be burning it in stoves in your house in about 2 years. We're trying to figure out post-closure. We've been looking at whether we can put in solar arrays and create a solar farm here. That doesn't look like it'll be financially viable. So we may start looking at other passive uses, whether we have Frisbee golf park here or walking paths, or if it's an education center and goats grazing. But we still have some work to do and probably go through a process for that. And wanted to tell you a little bit about how our system is financed. We are not financed under what the county would call the general fund, or a fund that comes from property taxes. We are what we call an enterprise fund, meaning we derive all of our revenues from our activities, which cover our costs. So that is primarily through the disposal fees that we charge both the collectors who come by your house as well as the public who brings materials to our facilities. And that currently we charge $90 per ton for every ton of waste that comes through here. Our operating budget is roughly $20 million, $21 million this year. And those tip fee revenues probably generate $18–19 million of our total budget. We get money from the collectors for the right to collect. They give us a portion of their gross receipts. For the county, it's 5%. For the cities, it's 7%. So that actually gets tacked on to your monthly collection bill. Sale of recyclables, revenue from energy recovery. So when we have that full system in place, we should be getting, and we're selling natural gas back to the grid, we should be getting about $500,000 a year on that. And as I said, no tax-based support. So in just to give you a sense of the size of the stream we're dealing with, last year, households and businesses generated 310,000 tons of discards. We'll call it solid waste, but that's not the amount of materials that got disposed. We diverted about 85,000 tons through our recycling collection programs and our composting programs. So we ended up putting into the landfill about 225,000 tons of waste. That comes out to roughly about a ton of waste per person per year is in the county is what we're throwing away. So as I said, we're diverting about 28% of our waste stream. We've set a goal, both the county and the state have set a goal for of diversion for about 45% of our waste stream. So when I talked earlier about us wanting to develop new facilities for increasing recycling and composting, that is for us to be able to meet and we believe far exceed that 45% diversion rate here in the county. So when we're managing stream materials like this, we really want to have a roadmap forward. So the county convened a committee that worked 2018 into 2019 to develop a master plan that kind of is the blueprint for how we want to move forward here in the county over the next 25 to 30 years. That plan was completed in 2019. And the primary areas that it looked at was expanding and improving recycling programs. So that's our construction and demolition materials. When we say we want to build a facility to process those, and I would say it's that and other bulky wastes. That's over 40% of the materials of our total waste stream is related to the construction and demolition activities here in the county with all the building and the growing population. That's a significant portion. So we want to build a facility to capture the wood and metals, wire, bulky plastics, cardboard, gypsum board, sheetrock, those types of things. So we've been identifying what it would take to do all of that work. We're also evaluating and identifying our future. As I said, our facility here is going to be, the landfill is going to be full in 2031. So part of the plan anticipates how do we deal with that, and I will talk about that later as well. So we are looking at changes to our collection programs. We want to expand our food waste recycling collection, expand the multifamily. As you kind of drive through Bend these days, you're seeing 7-story multifamily complexes and popping up all around town. That's just going to continue. So we are really going to need to do some on how do we capture materials out of those facilities, work with businesses on their waste streams. We want to establish uniform programs and services throughout the county so that as we're educating in one city, if somebody moves from Bend to Redmond or vice versa or down to Lapine, that our programs are consistent and our education is universal. Oh, my apologies. So I will step into one of the recommendations of the solid waste management plan was the development of a new landfill here in the county. We did look at whether a landfill would be the appropriate thing, or should we look to take materials elsewhere. We also looked at other disposal options, things like incineration. Should we build an incinerator here? The alternatives like incineration, or you might hear phrases of anaerobic digestion, gasification. We haven't seen any system of scale work cost effectively or for the long term without some adverse environmental impacts that is competitive or as trustworthy as landfilling for disposal. That may change 30 years from now, but currently landfilling was through the solid waste management planning process, the landfilling was determined as the best option for the county. And then we started to look at, does it make sense to transport that material out of county, or should we look to develop a in-county landfill? And through that process, from a cost perspective, an environmental impacts perspective, and a local responsibility perspective, it was determined that probably the best approach would be to attempt to do an in-county landfill, and we can discuss that in more detail when you're here. But that's the approach that we're taking. And so with that decision in 2019, we convened a group called the Solid Waste Advisory Committee to help the county in developing the process for how to site a facility in the county and then move through the process. So that committee has 12 appointed members from each of the city, from the general public, from the haulers, from the environmental community. And then they helped us establish the criteria by which we should be evaluating sites. And then they've been convening on a monthly basis when we are reviewing sites for consideration or moving them through the process. So they've been a great help to us. We've also had a consulting group do all the technical work and support the committee in their work. And then that committee makes recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners as to their findings and where they recommend that we should move forward. And ultimately, the board makes the final decision as to whether they want to move forward on a site for permitting. So we've kind of wanted to show you what that process looks like, because this would be the first landfill sited in the state of Oregon in well over 30 years. I think now we're approaching 33 years since the last one was sited. So this is new to all of us in the county, and certainly it's new to regulators too, who are currently in the position. So we kind of created a whole process by which we should move through the process. First, we did the solid waste management plan that asserted that we should look to site one here. Then we created the criteria by which we could judge sites. Then we collected data to figure out what might be areas in the county in which we could site, and then what might be potential properties within those areas that would be potentially large enough to do it. And then we run it through some steps to determine, is it appropriate? Would that site be appropriate? Or are there something what we would call fatal flaws that prohibit it from even moving forward? So that's what broad area screening does, and focus area screening is it really starts to, from a funnel perspective, take large areas with little information, and then bring it down, and you'll see through the process that we were able to kind of minimize the number of sites that we had to really look at. So this gives you a sense of, first we identified areas where we could not put a site. This big bubble down here on the bottom right hand corner, sage grouse, core sage grouse habitat. We can't put a landfill in there. Can't put it within perimeters. These circles up here are the perimeters around airports. There could be faults, geologic faults, or other geotechnical restrictions. So this showed us where we couldn't. And then this started to identify areas where we might be able to look for large swaths of property. So areas of. So this slide here just shows you the different criteria that. So when we started with the process and we identified potential parcels that were big enough, they had to have at least 250 acres that would be fillable for disposal materials. So we wanted a site that was close to 500 acres so that it could handle. So we had originally identified over 200 parcels. Pretty quickly running them through those criteria, we got it down to 31 that might be didn't have a immediate fatal flaw. And we ran those through what we call broadside screening. And those materials, or those sites quickly got whittled down to 12. And these are those 12 locations around the county. And of those, during this time, we started to have discussions with local airports. They were citing concerns around some of the sites we were looking at. The EPA requirement about how close to an airport we can be, there's a hard and fast rule that we can't be within 10,000 feet or roughly 2 miles from a runway. However, there's broader advisories from the FAA that landfills shouldn't be within 5 miles of the property boundary of airports. And the biggest thing that they're concerned with is bird strikes. So the landfills attract larger scavenger birds, things like ravens, hawks, eagles. We have bald eagles, golden eagles here, believe it or not. So large scavenger prey, as they ride the thermals, they could get up pretty high up in the air in and around the landfill. So we adhered to the advisory and the requests from the airports to stay away from that 5 mile zone. So that dropped us down pretty quickly to really 5 viable sites that we could really look at. Of those 5, ultimately we came down. This was our first crack at the egg here in 2024. We had really 2 sites that were left for us to do what we called a final site evaluation, which was a really deep dive into the site and make sure things like cultural resources, that this wasn't sacred land, what have you. And those 2 sites, as you can see on this map, one we referred to as the Rock East site near Pine Mountain, right on the edge of sage grouse habitat, but not in the core sage grouse habitat. That's the site right here. And then another one just east of the Badlands, an aggregate mine that the owners were interested in selling to us. As we showed earlier, we showed kind of how a landfill operates, but the Solid Waste Advisory Committee really decided that the place that they wanted to recommend was the Moon Pit site by the Badlands, primarily because it was less, not as close to sensitive habitats like sage grouse. It was already disturbed. It had been an aggregate mine, so the land was already dug up, and that they're actually ultimately with a mine you have to have a reclamation plan. How are you going to fill it back up and lessen the risk of it as a hole in the ground down in the future? So the Moon Pit site was recommended. However, we were not able to reach agreement with the owners of that site. So we reconvened the SWAC a few months ago, this past May, and an outcome of that was one more site which had been ruled out before because there had been a environmental habitat overlay that precluded the site. We were able to get more information from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and get more specific information around, in particular, where there was an eagle's nest, and came to find that once that site was, the eagle's nest general location was identified, it actually allowed this site to be reconsidered. And this is at the base of Horse Ridge. It's just south of Highway 20 before you head over the ridge towards Milliken Valley and east. So very similar location to the Moon Pit site. Also, it is an aggregate mine. It has less rock here and more sand and soils that they've been excavating over the years. this is a site that now the SWAC has decided to do a more what we referred to earlier as a final site evaluation, get much more detail information on our various areas of the criteria we want to judge by, to see if it truly is a viable site. And then we will present back to the board late winter, early spring, as to what is the preference of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee to a new landfill, whether it be this site, Horse Ridge, if it's deemed to be viable, or the other remaining site that we have, which is the Roth East site out towards the base of Pine Mountain. Our landfill siting process, this just gives you a bit of the timeline where we're at. As you can see, if we get this to the board in 2026, we really want to have everything set up, permits issued, facility constructed. We'll have about 5 years to get all of that work done. So that's a pretty tight time frame to go through the final stages of permitting. We do imagine that there will be some legal challenges, so things that we're going to have to consider. Hopefully we'll get there. When we go through that process, we've had, depending on the location, we've had different public comments. The sites that were located anywhere near neighborhoods, we had significant public involvement and attendance at our meetings, voicing their concerns around about a landfill anywhere near their homes, impacts on groundwater. You can see there's a lot of concerns around wildlife and impacts on those. So these are just kind of give you the idea of the types of comments we were getting. The larger the font, the more comments we got in regards to that issue. So it's a nice kind of graphic way to give you an idea of community input. We had close to 2,000 public comments, whether they be email or in person, through this process. So we're proud that we've been able to have it as transparent as possible, but I will say it's certainly an emotional process for people who are nearby a potential facility. So with that, we really look forward to seeing you here on the 7th. We'll give you a great tour of the site so you understand kind of all the activities that occur here at Not Landfill, and we really look forward to being able to answer any questions you have. We'll have a good amount of time for that, and really appreciate your engagement in this process, and hope you're enjoying learning more about the county, and particularly hope you enjoy your time with solid waste. So we'll see you soon. Take care.